I don't know how much of it was in my mind. I mean, since we are on the topic, I had to start here. I had to. This is the beginning and the end and everything in between. So I had to start here. It's been a really crazy and tricky and sometimes really lost journey that I've been on so far. But ultimately, I know that all of it is meant to make me into the person that I've always known that I can be. And my greatest definition of beauty, my highest definition of beauty, somehow being able to study my mind through the inside, through all of these experiences, has then allowed me to come out on the other side. And I don't even know what it means to come out of something, but I just kind of understand more the intricacies of my mind and how something can play out, and really that I am not that thing that I am witnessing or experiencing or seeing, experiencing somehow. So I'm really grateful because all of this has really just led me, without even me knowing, has led me into my greatest definition of beauty. And so I've got to start here. If you are just joining for the first time, I have links in the description below with a blog post and my podcast and different forms of content. But this one here is the full picture. And I go into more of it in my podcast, so go check that out. Every expression is different. But I'm starting here for a reason. My first experience with something that I could call, or something that is similar to a mental health disorder, is depression. And it's the first one that really struck me, although I may have had anxiety before then, and I'm pretty sure I did. But my dad died when I was 11, and something really protected me when he died, because otherwise I wouldn't have survived. But there was really something in me that really carried me through that time, and I didn't feel pain when it happened, even though I knew what was happening. I consciously knew. But there was still a knowing in me that, just a knowing in me that carried me. But for many years after that, after my dad's death, which fell the day after my birthday, for 14 or 15 years after that, and even more probably, I would get depressed around my birthday. And I don't know if, I don't know how much of it was in my mind. I mean, since we are on the topic of, our mind, I don't know how much I contributed to creating that. But I do know that every year, come February, which is the time of my birthday and his death anniversary, that something would set in me. And sometimes it felt like a wave or a wash of depression, and I still don't know how to describe it, and I don't know how much my thoughts contributed to the feeling that I'm trying to describe. But I remember one time when I was laying on my partner's couch in his apartment, and I thought that year was, I think I was thinking about how I didn't feel this heaviness that year. And I think in the next moment, it sort of just, I I felt like a black cloud possessing me and instilling itself in me, washing, just like taking residence within me, like coming into me. And again, I don't know if my thoughts contributed to it at that time, but I also felt a lot of despair. And there was this general sense of hopelessness that I encountered in the years after my dad's death, not just because of his death, but because of the circumstances in my home and in my mother's behavior. And that continued years after he died. And I remember telling myself that this year, Mom will get better. This year she'll be better. And I would say that at the beginning of the year, and then the whole year would go by, and I would, again, the next year, say the same thing. At the beginning of the new year, I would say, this year she'll be better. And I did that for years on end. And after 5 years, I still had hope, and I was like, you know, she's gonna get better. After 7, 8 years, I started to really question that, and I thought to myself, is this just how it's supposed to be? Because she wasn't getting any better, and it wasn't even my dad's death at that point that I struggled with. It was my expectations of my mom, that if she would be happy, then I could be happy. And years passed by, 10 years, more than that, 15, and I realized she was never going to be happy. And it was wrong of me to actually expect that from her, because she was just a human being doing the best that a human being could do. But I realized something so profound in that experience of my emotions being attached to my mother's emotions, which is that I have a choice in how I feel. And after many years of feeling lost and like things were never going to get better, I finally realized that I have this choice. And then as I got older, I realized that my attachment went from my dad to my mom, to then later having moved in with my partner after college to him. And so this need for emotional stability carried from one parent to another parent to then my partner, and I never fully worked on it. Never worked on it myself, never worked on being that myself. And I'll talk more about that, and I'm sure we'll get to how my relationship with my partner, how that was its own epiphany for me. So that's been my experience with what I can think of or relate to someone else's experience through the eyes of depression. I didn't know that's what it was while I was going through it. I still don't know. I really don't care for labels or titles. It doesn't make a difference to me whether I think of it as depression or not. I just know that for a period of my life, for about 14 or 15 years, I had a really low level of energy and a state of mind which just felt like, I just felt hopeless. And I think I had just submitted to not having control over my life, to not having control, but then still hoping and still pulling for control that I didn't have. And it took me a long time to realize that the control that I had ultimately wasn't anything external. It was just the control that I have within me. And this has been the greatest lesson of my life. And the first lesson, truly, I've learned so many lessons in my life, but this is the first one that really did it for me, and that set the stage for all other emotional and mental growth in my life. It was just this knowing that we have a choice, and as human beings, that there is a space between what happens and our interpretation of that event or that thing. And in this space, if we can find it, we can assign our own meaning. We don't have to cling to the meanings that are assigned to us or that somebody around us assigns. That anything can have any meaning, any event, anything that you can imagine. And it is that way in the world when you see all the different things that happen in a human being's life and what ultimately becomes of their life. You could then probably figure out what meaning they assigned to the event that then was the catalyst for their growth, or the event that maybe caused their demise. It's all about the meaning that we assign. So that first bout of depression, or this period of my life that I refer to as a dark night of the soul, lasted a really long time for me. And it took a long time for me to learn that my emotional well-being doesn't depend on anybody else. It's in nobody else's hands but my own. It's in no one else's mind but my own, and it's my job and it's my responsibility. My emotional stability, my emotional well-being is my job and my responsibility, and I own that today. The second mental health disorder that I think I've probably had all my life is anxiety. And I think human beings of all kinds, I think all human beings deal with some level of anxiety in their life. And I think of anxiety as a calling of some sort, as a signal of some sort. It's communicating something. And very often, I think the tricky part for me is trying to understand, well, what is it trying to tell me? I had a friend in college, I remember, who had really bad panic attacks. And I remember having a conversation with her one day where I sort of asked this question, like, do you know what is at the root of it? And she said, I have no clue. I have no idea. And yeah, I mean, if she did, right, she wouldn't probably be in that situation. She probably wouldn't be experiencing, those attacks, or at least at that severity. But I think it's kind of crazy to be in a situation where we're experiencing something and we don't exactly know why it's happening. And I think that's very normal for human beings. I think that there's so many things that happen on the outside. We lose somebody, a relationship breaks apart. Somebody says something that then triggers us, and we're just left like, I don't understand why this has happened. I don't understand why I feel this way. I don't understand why I'm going through this. I don't know why my body is shaking. I just don't understand. And I think that's a normal part of the human experience, and I think that's okay, and I think that's something that we just figure out with time. My experience with anxiety hasn't been, thankfully, to the level of having a panic attack. But I've had anxiety probably since I was a child. And the way that anxiety has manifested most for me is in the form of a sensation at the top of my stomach. So it almost feels like a warm sensation at the very top of my stomach. And not a pleasant sensation, but an uncomfortable one, or a slightly uncomfortable one. And I don't remember much of my childhood. I don't remember a lot of my past. But my mom often jokes and tells a story about how, since I would perform a lot as a child, that often when they would call my name on stage, that I'd be in the bathroom with my dad. And when she said that, I think one time she said that I could remember. I called upon a memory where I was in the bathroom stall, and I guess I imagined my dad on the outside of the stall with one hand on the top of the door, just waiting. And I'm just so lucky to have him. But I don't remember how I felt in my life. I just know that there were experiences where I had an upset stomach. So that's why I know that I had anxiety, but I don't remember how I felt. But it's only been recently in the last 3 years that I've really come to terms with how it most commonly manifests for me, and that's in the form of the sensation at the top of my stomach. And it's in the past, it's also, I guess, I've sometimes felt it in my chest. I've also had a tension for a little while that one of my soul sisters did Reiki on me, and then it went away a lot, but it was between like my neck and my shoulder. But I started to feel the anxiety in my stomach a lot, and I started to feel it after I turned 31. So about 3 years ago from the filming of this video. And what happened at that time was another mental health condition, the onset of another mental health condition, and I guess I'll lead into that, which was PTSD. And it's the closest thing that I could think of that might be what I was experiencing. And I had no idea that, I didn't know what it was before. I didn't think I was going through depression while I was going through it. I don't think I knew at the time of going through any of these experiences, of my experiences with any of these mental health disorders. I don't think that I've and probably I should call them conditions, because they are just a condition of the human mind. And I think just like, we all catch a cold, or many of us, that that it's common to experience anxiety and times in life when you're just feeling really down. I don't know if it's as common to experience PTSD, which is what I experienced after I turned 31 and my relationship with my partner separated. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't have any identity. Everything that I had known just was completely obliterated, and I was living with the reality of the life of lies that I had created up until that point. So shortly after I turned 31, I had what I would describe as an awakening, and it was really powerful. It was I can describe an awakening as something that really profoundly shifts the way that you see yourself, and maybe your perspective of the world. But I think it really starts in the self. And so I had an awakening, which really allowed me to see how I had lived up until that point in my life, and how it actually wasn't in line with who I wanted to be. And so I discovered this new truth. And I have to thank my partner so much for that, because it was the truth that he had shown me, just by being in my life, and just the universe putting him in my life. I discovered integrity, I discovered nobility, I discovered unconditional love and acceptance. And so I had, up until that point, been living with him for almost 10 years. And all of a sudden at 31, I woke into a different person. I felt like it was a completely different experience in my mind. I didn't know who he was to me. I kept asking myself, like, who, like, I know him, like, I know I've been living with him. I mean, I know my history with him, but who is he to me? And I felt like I had forgotten everything. And I literally felt like I was starting living from scratch, from the very beginning. And I felt like a child. Even when washing the dishes, I had no idea how much I should scrub. Should I wash it twice? And it was interesting because at the same time, my PTSD manifested because of all the guilt and the shame that I had felt around the person that I had been, and the things that she'd thought and done. And the people that she'd used, secretly hoping that her beloved would never find out. And it was a sort of infidelity of the mind. That's the best way I can describe it. But my partner, who'd been so disciplined in his love for me that he never even looked at another woman. I'm really grateful that I got to see such principle and have that right beside me, so I could know who I wanted to be. And everything that I wanted to be after I turned 31 was exactly right next to me. And I know that the universe is intentional. That I know for sure. And so I am just eternally grateful for this. There are no words, but for everything, for him, and for putting him right next to me, and for the universe. So at that time, because of all these lies that for the first time were bothering me, I don't think that they'd bothered me since I told them. Some of them were 20 years old. These lies that I told that had affected both of our realities. But I came clean with everything that I could think of. But I still had a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of forgiving myself to do. But in this time, my partner had decided that he didn't want to be with me anymore. And so I clung like anything, just desperately clung to him, because I could never imagine being without him. And neither of us had imagined not being together. But there was so much fear there that I was experiencing for the first time. And after I had this awakening, I really experienced fear for the first time. And I experienced not only fear, but I experienced jealousy, embarrassment, insecurity, all these emotions that I had known before and just thought that, they didn't really touch me. This was the first time in my life where I really felt jealous. This was the first time that in my life that I could feel how insecure, like how I felt, how my body felt when I felt insecure. And it's almost like I got a crash course after that awakening, in all the ways that maybe my body had protected me all my life. Especially, when my dad died, there was something in me that really guided me, and probably so that I could survive. But now at 31, it must have been time. I must have been able to handle all of these things, as difficult as they were. And this was the most difficult time in my life so far. But I had a lot of regret and shame and guilt around the mistakes that I'd made. And that guilt and shame manifested itself in the form of PTSD. And also, I think my attachment to my partner and my fear in not being his girl anymore, or his wife, or, you know, we'd been together for so long. That's all that I had known. And that's all that he knew too. But thankfully he had his own life, but I didn't. And that's another lesson that I learned, that that there is no partnership without a solo ship. There is no joining without one being whole first. And that's been another one of the greatest lessons of my life, is that I need to be my own person, even to be worthy of a relationship to myself. Forget worthy to anybody else, but for me to believe that I'm worthy of being in a relationship with anybody else. And yes, I know that we are all worthy of everybody that we love. But if your partner is busting their butt and being their best self and you aren't, there's going to be a time in your life when you wake up to that fact, to that realization that you're not everything that you could be. And here your partner is constantly pushing themselves to higher and greater heights. There's going to be a time in your life where you're not going to be okay with that anymore. And especially if your partner is like mine and loves you unconditionally, even though they're living their best life and they're doing everything that they can, and because they're living their best life, they probably see that you are failing, right? They probably somehow see that, because here they are striving, so they know so they know what this looks like. So they also must know what the opposite of it looks like. And that's something that I really admire my partner for now, when I see, like, oh my goodness, here's this human being just at the very top, at the peak of human existence, just an unconditional lover, and meeting his potential, and still loves me down here, loves me who isn't true to me, is a facade, is not doing anything with my life, is not being anything, being everything that I could be, or being anything, right? But I've still had this unconditional love all my life, and I think that's really what allowed me to feel safe enough to then awaken to the truth of who I want to be. And I'm just so grateful that I've seen such pure unconditional love and such remarkable truth and remarkable integrity, because that's where my bar is. My bar is way up here, and it's so high that it doesn't even fit in the frame of this video, but it's infinitely through the sky, because that's the kind of integrity that I have by my side. So there's something to strive for there. But because I've had all this unconditional love, and I had this partner who was just the best partner to me, and I was failing myself, that I had all this PTSD, and it started, I was having flashbacks and triggers, and they felt like they were out of my control. I felt like these faces that I would see were out of my control, and these faces revolved around the guilt that I had felt and the people that I'd used in the past or thought of in a way that I wouldn't today, that I don't feel good about, and that I thought about on some level that I wasn't aware of, but I was still, I don't know, I wasn't aware of it on some level, but I know I did it today. So I don't know what was covering up that awareness before. I don't know. So my experience with PTSD lasted about 3 years, and sometimes I think I still have those triggers, and the biggest thing about this was that it really felt like it was out of my control, and I think the common factor in all of these mental conditions is the importance that that was underneath, the importance that somehow I had assigned. And in this scenario, in this condition, it was the importance of my relationship that I had perceived, and how this importance was, it was an unhealthy importance. It was an unhealthy dependence. And that's why I'm really, really grateful that I got to see that, although it was through this way. But yeah, I could really see how the conflict within me was because I really wanted, I actually didn't know if I wanted to be with my partner or if I was just desperately clinging to him. And I felt all this fear and guilt for not being a better person before. So that was interesting. But PTSD, every time I had a trigger, it was accompanied by the sensation at the top of my stomach, which I think of as anxiety. But every time I would have a trigger or an unwanted thought, bloop, like right after it, it was so close that I actually thought that they came together, but it's actually the thought that came first, and right after it, just so sneakily, was the sensation in my stomach. And I have just recently learned that every thought that we have creates a reaction in our body, and so our body experiences some sort of sensation. So it definitely makes sense. And so I had that for about 3 years. The last 2 years, or maybe 6 months after the initial onset of PTSD, I developed OCD. I'd never had that before in my life. I never had PTSD before either. I never had depression before I had depression. I mean, I didn't even know what these things were before experiencing them. And I think I only know them now because I've come out of them, which really just means that I feel controlled by them less. They no longer control me, at least for the most part. So my PTSD and OCD actually, I healed at the same time, but I had thought that because they occurred at the same time, and even more than that, because the triggers and the unwanted thoughts that I was having as a part of my OCD were the same ones that I was having with my PTSD. I somehow, I knew that they were connected, and maybe OCD was just another manifestation of this guilt and shame, and really the importance that that was underneath my relationship with my partner. Oh, man, so crazy. So crazy. It just speaks on how attached a human being can be. And I know I'm not the only one. I know that so many of you watching this can relate to just feeling like you need somebody with you at all times, or you need to be in somebody's arms, or you need to be with somebody to have some sort of identity. And you may not think of it this way with these words, but if you find yourself in these situations where, you know, you've never been alone, or you don't like to be alone, or you rely on your partner for a lot of things, these are telling signs that that there's some unhealthy attachment there. And I'm really grateful that I got to see this pattern within me, because, man, now when I get with my partner, it's not going to be from a place of needing him. And I'm truly, truly blessed, because the security aspect of our relationship, the financial security, no matter what happens, I mean, that's just given. He's just that kind of human. But as far as wanting to be with him, there's no truth that I've been happier to discover in all my confusion since the awakening, and looking at him like, I don't even know who he is to me. Like, what is love? I've discovered the truth. I've discovered a lot more than I even bargained for. So I'm really grateful for this awakening, and I'm grateful for all these conditions of the mind, right? And ultimately what they've taught me. They've taught me that I need to be okay being myself. I need to have integrity. I need to be in alignment with the person that I am inside. I need to go after what I want. I can't let my insecurities stop me. I need to be a whole human being, and I need to be my own emotional stability, because I will never ever find that on the outside. And so all of these conditions have taught me that. I've learned that from every single one of these. And I think the most profound one, the most profound realization that really helped me the most with all of these conditions, and the fifth one, which I haven't mentioned yet, is ADHD, and I'll get into that after this. But so I started to tell you a little bit about how there was an importance that I was assigning underneath each of these conditions. There was some importance for me, and significant importance. And the thing that really helped me with all of these is knowing that, and being able to experience that I am not my mind. I am not my thoughts. I am not even the person who sees those thoughts, because thoughts come and go, right? And a thought is just a thought. It's a figment of our creation. So if the thought is an illusion, if it comes and goes, and depending on the day, it's there, it's not there, it's a ghost, it's a demon, it's there, it's not there. 1 minute, I love my mother-in-law. The other minute, I don't. Like, if it's just coming and going, if it changes, then I know that it's not real. What is real then? Well, it's not even the person who sees that. It's not even the person who sees that thought, because if the thought isn't real, then me who sees the thought and starts believing the story, the me that sees the illusion, is also not real, can't be real. So then I am not my mind, I am not my thoughts, I'm not even the one who sees my thoughts. I am that which has no shape, no image, no visual, no picture, no face, no identity, no thought, no feeling, no emotion associated with it, nothing, no picture, not even blankness, no concept. I just am. And when I close my eyes and I can see all of these things and shed them one by one, if I can see it, I'm not it. I can see that, I'm not that. If I can observe it, if it can be observed, right? Because I can even observe the person that sees the thought, right? So I can't be that person either. So then who am I? I'm nothing. And it's this nothing, it's this emptiness, it's this space where I have found peace and where I have found the truth. And it's taken me all of these states of mind to know this truth, to discover it and to know it. But I think that it was worth it. As crazy as that sounds, because I got here, didn't I? I know the truth now, didn't I? I'd rather know the truth than go my whole life being happy-go-lucky all the time, and without, all the suffering or whatever I experienced in my mind. I'd rather still suffer and still know the truth. And I promise you that there is a way out of everything in your mind, even the things that seem impossible, even the things that seem like they'll never change or they're a part of you. They are not. There were times when I had PTSD where I thought, in those 3 years, I thought to myself, is this how I'm gonna be for the rest of my life? Is this how my mind's gonna be? Is it gonna feel like am I gonna feel like, out of control? Is my mind gonna be out of control like this all the time for the rest of my life? And I felt, sometimes I felt like, yeah, like it was gonna be. And I would do this meditation with Jeff Warren on Calm, on my Calm app. And thank goodness for him, because he has some meditations about just being okay with yourself the way that you are for the rest of your life. And sometimes I would listen to these meditations and I would cry, because the truth is, yes, I would live on my worst day. I would live like this for the rest of my life. But I know that I'm not this. I know that this is just part of the human experience. And you know what? It's brought me closer to the truth. It's led me right up to the truth's door, which is that I'm not my thoughts. I'm not this mind. I just have this human mind, and my human mind does whatever it wants, whenever it wants. It's allowed to, right? It'll do whatever it wants, but I just know that I'm not it. I'm not, I don't associate myself with things that it does. If it does, sometimes I'm just curious, like, mine's doing that thing. Why is it doing that thing? Why is it going there? Why is it thinking about that? Why is it thinking about that for the 100th time today? Why won't it stop thinking about that? So I just, I'll get curious, but there's no longer frustration or attachment to being a certain way, because none of it is real. It's not real. None of this stuff is real. It's just in your mind. It's in my mind. It's in my mind. So it can't be real. What is real? This is real. This is real. This is real. I mean, see things. This is real, right? The demons in my head are not real. The thoughts that plague me aren't real. I mean, yes, what I can see is real, right? But even then, this is not the truth of who I am. Not the truth of who I am. The truth of me can't be seen. The truth of we cannot be observed with the human eye. Even with the eyes closed, you're not anything that you can see in your mind. You're not even the most beautiful, lovely, loving picture. You're not even that. You're no picture. You're no visual. You're no image. You're no color, no shape, no identity, no face, no nothing. No even thought. You just are. So, the last mental interesting state that I've found myself in, and this has probably been for I remember since I was in high school. That was probably the first time I noticed that I had zoned out in a class. And I actually remember at that time, when I zoned back in, I realized that I'd been thinking about my toxic state at home. And that was really the first memory that I have of not paying attention. And it's interesting because I actually made the connection there, but after that, I went to college, struggled so much to pay attention in my lectures. Just remember feeling so frustrated when I would have to study, and just kept reading the same page over and over again. I felt like I wasn't there. And there was a part of me that knew it wasn't normal. I didn't think other people struggled as much like this. I don't know, it just seemed easier for other people to focus, or maybe I don't know somebody or most people's experience as well. I don't know. But I also know that with ADHD, that it's that you have more success concentrating on things that are important to you. And I've familiarized myself with Dr. Gabor Mate's work and perspective on ADHD, and I agree that it is some sort of coping mechanism from when we were children, and so I don't think I've ever really been fully present. I don't remember a lot from my childhood, and even from high school on, that first time that I actually caught myself not paying attention. I mean, that's the only memory that I have, but I went my whole life not paying attention, not being present. And so there was some importance, again, assigned there, because even though I didn't consciously assign it, it was some way that I was coping with reality. And so and so it's interesting to see how the importance that we place all of these have some significance personally, right? Each of these mental conditions has some significance for me personally. So when I turned 31, I had the awakening. I realized, well, another part of that awakening was the part that had dissociated for as long as I could remember had returned. So I was more present than I'd ever been, and now for the first time I could actually see where my thoughts were going, and I didn't like it. It was a lot of insecurity, a lot of unwanted thoughts that I felt ashamed for having. And on top of that, I was hard on myself, because here I was, and I had this part of me that, I was paying attention more now. And this, I don't know how to describe this experience of this part that had dissociated. And I mean, I only knew that it had dissociated because it came back to me now, and I could actually, I was more present, and I could actually see when I was zoning out what my mind was thinking about. And that had never occurred up until that point. I mean, I would zone out of a movie for like half the movie. I would listen to a podcast and just zone out for minutes at a time. Like this had become like normal for me. Like I started to expect this in my life, because I somehow inside knew that I knew that about myself, that that was something that happened a lot. So with my ADHD, when my attention finally did return, it's funny how harsh and critical we are with ourselves. But now I was hard on top of that, just knowing, just so hard on myself, man. I think about like all the blessings and the good, and how this whole awakening was a really beautiful thing. And it was my own frustration and guilt and shame for having been who I was, and now frustration for even the smaller length of time that I would zone out for, just still being frustrated, or being even more frustrated with myself than I'd been before. And it's like what was where did all this harshness come from? And did it come from the importance? Did it come from just wanting to be worthy of my partner so bad? And just wanting to fix myself. I really wanted to fix myself. I gave myself like 6 months, and I was like, this was when all of this first started, when PTSD first started. And I was like, okay, I give myself 6 months, and then I was like, I'll give myself a year. I'll be all fixed, and then I'll come back. And that's literally what I told myself. I'll live with my mom for a year, and I'll be all fixed. I'll heal myself, and I'll come back, and I'll be in this relationship. And I'm sure you very well know that when you give yourself a timeline for anything that cannot be seen, that it doesn't work that way. You don't give yourself a timeline for healing. You release your expectations of how long it will take or what that will look like. But I clung to it so desperately because I clung to my relationship, because I thought that I could, whatever I had to do to fix myself, to fix my mind so that I would no longer have these triggers, and so I could be with my partner again, feel like that, you know, I was worthy of him, because I didn't really understand what was going on in my mind. And I had all these triggers of people that I had looked at in the past or had somehow emotionally felt something for while I was with my partner, and now they were all coming to my mind, and I was like, why am I having these? Like, why am I having these triggers? Why am I having these triggers if that's in the past? And I would be confused, like, why am I having them again? Like, what do they mean? Do I feel something for that person? Who am I? Who are they? Like, it was just a whole mess. It was just a hot mess in my mind. I think sometimes we go through that in life. And I'm grateful for that mess, because in the releasing of my relationship to my partner, I have discovered myself. I have discovered YouTube. I have discovered my best life. I have discovered my contribution to the world. And I wouldn't have been able to if probably everything hadn't happened the way that it did. So I think everything that we go through and experience in our mind is ultimately so that we can come to some truth. I think all of it points in the direction of the truth if you look at it, and if you look underneath it, and then if you also know that you are not it. Anything that you can see or experience or observe is just a phenomena. It's just, it's a creation of our mind. You are not any thought. You just are. I hope this was helpful to you, and I will link I will also link a blog post and my podcast episode that talks about this, and any other content that might be helpful in the description. I love you, and I hope you know that you are not your mind. You never were, you never will be. There is a truth in you that you cannot see. It cannot be seen. It cannot be seen to the naked eye, not even with the eyes closed. It's only what you know. It's only what you know to be the truth. I love you. Thank you for being here with me. I wish you an incredible existence, an incredible journey. And I always wish for you what I wish for myself, and that's just to know that I'm not my mind. And one thing that has actually helped me the most in all of this is just connecting to my heart and grounding myself in my heart and doing what I need to each day, at the beginning of each day, to ground myself in my heart. Because when I do that, I have a better day. And when my mind is spinning out of control, I really try to slow down. Sometimes when my mind is spinning out of control, it's because my body is moving at the same pace that my mind is very often. And that means even when I'm eating and I'm rushing, it's because my mind is moving at the same pace. And so when I realize that, I literally put the spoon down, I sit back, put the plate down, take a breath. And when I slow my body down, when I slow myself down, my mind automatically slows down. And I just remember that I'm not my thoughts. I'm not any thought. And neither are you. Just slow down, ground yourself in your heart, and you will know the truth. It's not of any words or images or visuals. It's not any concept, not any thought, no feeling or even emotion. It's just nothing. cannot be observed or seen. Not by you, not by me. That's the most beautiful thing. That's why it just is. And that's why it's everywhere. Most of all, within. I love you. I'm with you. My heart is with you. You're never alone. Comment and share your own experiences with mental health. Just anything you could think of. Comment below. Share and be free of it. I love you. I'll see you.